Alex Crook, who's prizing open the notebook once again. Good afternoon, Crookie.
Good afternoon. We good?
Yeah, we're not too bad, thank you. Ruben Amorim, you're just starting to wonder if the heat was off a little bit, but of course he's going to be back under the microscope again this weekend when the Premier League returns. He'd like to sign Carlos Baleba, but you think there's issues?
Yeah, absolutely. Another chance for Ruben Amorim to do what he's failed to do so far in nearly a year in charge by putting back-to-back Premier League wins on the board. But that won't be easy at Anfield on Sunday. And in fact, they've got a really difficult run of games to navigate Manchester United after this international break, including the visit of Carlos Baleba's Brighton. That's the next home game at Old Trafford a week on Saturday. Now, we know United were keen to sign Baleba in the summer. The Brighton owner, Tony Bloom, has come out in a round of interviews with local journalists today and admitted there was interest, but the message from Brighton pretty quickly was that Baleba wasn't for sale, and I believe that will remain the case in January. So if this deal is going to happen, I think it will be next summer at the earliest. And we all know Tony Bloom, you boys as well as anyone, that he seems to be absolutely picture perfect at knowing the right time to sell a player. And I think the reason that he's keeping his powder dry on Baleba is that he believes if he can get back to top form, and he's not been great so far this season, we should say that Manchester United won't be the only club willing to pay Brighton's asking price in excess of £100 million.
I was going to say, can you think of any other clubs that may be interested in a Brighton player?
I never want Chelsea to ever buy a player from Brighton ever again.
Even a good one like that.
I don't care what he is. Don't buy him.
So bitter.
I know. Adam
Caicedo's been all right, though, hasn't he?
Oh, yeah, Caicedo's been brilliant. And Cucurella.
Yeah.
Adam Wharton is on United's list as well, isn't he?
Yeah, I think him, obviously Elliot Anderson, who's done so well with England, looks right at home, doesn't he, in international football. Talk even in Germany of Joe Bellingham, but again, I think that's a tough deal to do, particularly in January. And listening to Steve Parish on talkSPORT last weekend, he was saying, look, we're not under any pressure to sell Adam Wharton financially. We're in a good place. He's obviously still under contract there as well. So I think United's search for a midfielder, and they did need one in the summer. It was the one position really they neglected when they spent a lot of money at the top end of the pitch. I think that weight will go on, and I think it's a big fundamental flaw in the team, really. They haven't got that top-class defensive holding midfielder that all the top clubs, not just in the Premier League, but in Europe, have got as well.
It's legs as well in midfield. They could do with at least two, I'd say. But that could be the difference, because they front three look good and defence is so-so, but okay. But that's their weakness. So, you think eventually they will address this.
It's been their weakness for a number of years, though. I'll go right back to when Michael Carrick retired. I was talking then about Declan Rice being a potential long-term successor, and it's an area of the team that they've never invested in, really, or they've invested in, and they've invested in the wrong players. They've got Kobbie Mainoo there, by the way, who I think has got the legs to get around midfield, but he hasn't got the trust of the manager.
No, exactly that. Now, Antoine Semenyo, Tottenham and Manchester United showed a bit of interest before he signed that new deal. Which I'm sure he was incredibly grateful for, him and his agent. So, but there is maybe a bit of a chink of light potentially for those that would like to sign him at some point, Crookie.
Yeah, and I think eventually, inevitably, if he continues on the run of form that he is, one of those big boys is going to pull the trigger. As you say, it's my information that he met both Tottenham and Manchester United in the summer before signing a new 5-year deal at Bournemouth. We wondered then if there would be a release clause involved, and I've been told this morning that is indeed the case. There is a release clause in the contract. I don't have the finer details because, as Tottenham know all too well from their pursuit of Morgan Gibbs-White, even when there are release clauses, clubs are at pains to try and keep the information a secret. But I think Bournemouth are aware that Semenyo probably wouldn't have signed the new contract without a release clause, so they were adult enough to agree to that. And I think they're also aware that, as I say, if he keeps banging the goals and getting the assists that he is, then one of those big boys, maybe even Liverpool, it was Richard Hughes, their sporting director, who signed him in the first place for Bournemouth from Bristol City, that they're going to pull the trigger. And you look at the stats this season, only Erling Haaland has scored more Premier League goals. He makes goals as well. He scores all kind of goals. And it was a wonderful individual effort that he got against Fulham on that Friday night game live on talkSPORT when Bournemouth came from behind to win. He is going to be sought after. That is absolutely not in doubt.
It was a very interesting piece in the Sunday Times about footballers using skills coaches, personal skills coaches outside of training, and he's one of them, and it's obviously really benefited him.
Yeah, it has. And I think I've said this to you guys before, maybe even as recently as last week. I think when you look at players like Semenyo, it is a sign that the pyramid we have in this country is working, because he was plucked from the EFL. I think they only spent about £10.5 million to sign him from Bristol City, and there are other players that have come up from the EFL and prospered in the Premier League. And I think it's something we should be proud of, that ultimately if Antoine Semenyo does end up at one of those big guns, the pathway is doing its job properly, and Adam Wharton would be the same.
And maybe you look beyond the Premier League. Let's not forget he's just qualified for a World Cup with Ghana. That'd be a big shop window for him next summer. So have a good World Cup, and it could open other doors for him overseas, Crookie.
It could, and you look at the players that have gone overseas. Again, a lot of them have come via the EFL route. I mentioned Joe Bellingham now at Borussia Dortmund. Michael Elise has done brilliantly at Bayern Munich, and I do wonder if there are going to be Premier League clubs come January and certainly next summer who are trying to bring him back to these shores. So what we've seen from those big European heavyweights in recent transfer windows is they're not afraid to sign talent from England. And I think that's a good thing as well. The more of our players that go abroad and prosper, the better, because there was a long time when it just didn't happen for British-based players overseas.
Now, Danny Roll, we were chatting to Stuart Weir yesterday up in Scotland about Danny Roll and the possibility of him taking over at Rangers. Kevin Muscat's been mentioned, pretty agricultural player in his day, but played for Rangers, of course, and has been doing well overseas as a coach. But you think Danny Roll's still in the frame, but possibly with a bit of sort of Rangers backroom backup?
Yeah, this is a constantly evolving story. And in fact, I've got fresh information in the last 10, 15 minutes or so that suggests that Danny Roll isn't any longer the favourite, and that maybe Kevin Muscat, as you mentioned, is now in the box seat. What we have reported in the notebook is that if Danny Roll did get the job, then he would be willing to include members of Rangers past, if you like, in his backroom staff. He wouldn't be averse to appointing club legends. I know Stephen Davis was a possible lieutenant to Steven Gerrard when it looked like he was going to get the job. Neil McCann is someone who's got close ties actually to Muscat. So I think whoever comes in, I think the Rangers hierarchy are keen that some former players are involved, and maybe that will give Muscat the edge at this moment in time. I've got to say there seems to be a groundswell of support from Rangers fans on social media. Gerrard was their dream ticket seemingly, but that's not going to happen. We know that now, and it seems that Muscat would be welcomed back with open arms. The slight issue they've got is that he's got 4 games left of his season. He's managing in China at the moment for Shanghai Port, and they're in a good place to win the league. And I think he wants to get that done before he would really think about jumping ship. So maybe there's a possibility, bearing in mind that Rangers have a league game against Dundee United at the weekend, that if they do go down the Muscat route, then somebody like Neil McCann comes in an interim basis and then joins Muscat's backroom staff when he comes in full time.
And finally,
it's a bit like Ange, in as much as he's done well in Australia and Japan and in China. So yeah,
I think I'd rather be tackled by Ange, to be honest. And just finally, talking of Ange, maybe another sign you've spotted that he is on pretty thin ice at Forest.
Yeah, these noises aren't going away. Obviously, there were reports this week, and we've been able to back them up at talkSPORT, that Sean Dyche would be a contender to come in if Ange Postecoglou is sacked. They've got Chelsea at the weekend, no wins in 7. You could easily see that being no wins in 8. And I think then Evangelos Marinakis may well act. Scott Munn, someone that you'll know from Tottenham, he was part of the hierarchy there, a big ally of Ange Postecoglou, and there were strong whispers when Postecoglou was appointed that Scott Munn may well follow him to the City ground, because of course Ross Wilson, the sporting director, has just joined Newcastle. He's now taken a job overseeing Parma over in Serie A and joining their executive board. So I think that's another worrying sign for Ange Postecoglou, that someone he was potentially lining up to come in and support him at Forest has gone elsewhere.
Good stuff, Crookie. It's all at the talkSPORT website, isn't it?
It is, yeah. talkSPORT website every Tuesday, and you can sign up for the weekly newsletter there as well.
Brilliant. Okay, we'll catch up with you soon. Thanks very much.
Cheers, guys.
Paul Hawksbee and Andy Jacobs, Monday to Friday afternoons 1 till 4 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.